dear participants, welcome back to lecture number 5 of the 14-day lecture series titled Dialectics 2022. Today we have among us a very young and erudite scholar. Some of you all might be aware of his scholastic abilities, as he has been a frequent resource person and speaker on this platform. It's none other than Dr. Sovan Chakraborty, and Dr. Sovan will be speaking on Marxism. On behalf of Team DAATH Voyage, Dr. Sovan, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and it's always a pleasure to have an erudite scholar like you on our platform.
I should thank you on this occasion. Yeah.
On behalf of
I thought the introduction was over.
May I take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Sovan to all of you, dear participants. Dr. Sovan presently is working as an assistant professor in the Department of English, Patna Science College in Patna University. Prior to joining this post, he has worked as a research scholar in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. In 2017, he was awarded the Dora Plus Visiting Doctoral Fellowship, part of URDF Erasmus Plus grants, to the Department of Estonian and Comparative Folklore, Institute of Cultural Research and Arts, University of Taru, Estonia, Europe. He has served as a faculty member in a couple of technical and general degree institutions, both private and public. He has a keen interest in the fields of folklore and oral narratives, and has published a few research articles on Bengali folk ritual tales. Apart from that, his research interests and publications cover literatures of Indian modernity, Indian writing in English, and contemporary South Asian literatures. Some of his publications feature in internationally recognized journals indexed by Web of Science, Arts and Humanities Citation Index, AHCI, and Emerging Sources Citation Index, ESCI, Scopus, and European Reference Index for the Humanities, ERIC+, and are published by such globally acknowledged publishers as Taylor and Francis, Routledge, John Benjamin's Publishing Company, Roman Books, London, among others. On behalf of Team DAATH Voyage, Dr. Sovan, it's always a pleasure, and it's always great to have you on this platform. Thank you again, once again, on behalf of Team DAATH Voyage. Without wasting much time, the platform is all yours, Dr. Sovan.
I would like to thank Madam Dr. Shreya Bhattacharya and Dr. Shoikat Banerjee for giving me this opportunity. I feel always obliged to address students from this platform, because I feel that a large number of students across the country, or sometimes you have told me that even there are participants from outside the country. So a large number of gathering I could address and I could share my thoughts with. So this is an outstanding platform, and I really heartily thank both Madam and you for giving me this opportunity, and especially for creating and continuing with such felicity this platform, or this virtual academic platform that is a DAATH Voyage lecture series, and different editions with different topics. Fine. So I'm very grateful once again. So should I start my lecture?
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. So the good evening, all of you, the listeners who are there, and this is a topic called Marxism that I have taken up. That I'll be taking up, in a few seconds. But before that, I'd like to, think about the nomenclature of the lecture series, which is Dialectics 2022. Now, this Dialectics is something which I think is core to my talk, because the dialectics is both a combination of a dialectic or dialectics and the praxis. Fine. So it will be a theoretical discussion on the dialectics, which is central to Marxist thought, even the Hegelian thought from which Marx derived his idea. And then there will be praxis or practical applications or understanding of the theoretical conceptions. So when we move to this practical, application, PPTs related to this practical applications of Marxism on different texts, you might notice that I have named those PPTs with the permission of the organizers. I don't want to commit a plagiarism for that. Dialectics, fine. On all these PPTs, fine. I have taken up 3 texts, and all of those PPTs are named dialectics, fine, because they are the application. They're going to be the praxis of dialectics in texts in a broad way, fine. So Shoykota has already, introduced me, so I do not think that there is anything that is related to this introductory PPT. I'll move to the next. So Marxism, I'll start with the relationship between Karl Marx himself and Marxism. Let's see before entering that topic, let's see the map. Fine. So this is today's map of how the lecture is going to proceed. First of all, just give me a second here. Yeah, so I'll be talking about Karl Marx and Marxism just now, as I said. Then I'll be coming to the basic concepts from slide number 4 to 12, and these are the concepts that I'm going to cover. Fine. So there are dialectics, as I said, this is central to Marxist thought. Then dialectical materialism and historical materialism, then capital, commodity, and value, alienation, base and superstructure, ideology, class structure and conflict, and communism and utopia, which is the final synthesis, which is regarded as the final synthesis of the Marxian dialectics. Fine. So this is these topics I'll be, or basic concepts I'll be covering from slide number 4 to 12. Then I'll be entering aesthetics Marxism, which is like how different shades of Marxist thoughts or praxis have been taken over in the field of culture, which is more which is termed as the superstructure in a more apt Marxist terminology. So how in the field of culture and aesthetics, several shades of Marxist concepts have been taken up in order to analyze this field. And there I'll be taking up, after that, I'll be taking up some select theories or theorists of aesthetic Marxism, like Hegemony by Antonio Gramsci, Ideological State Apparatuses by Louis Althusser, then Frankfurt School by Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno. Frankfurt School in general I'll be discussing, but then culture industry or the dialectics of enlightenment, that I'll touch upon as a passing reference. Fine. So so I mentioned here the names of Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno. Then I'll be coming to the core part of literature, which is obviously a part of aesthetic, this aesthetic field or the cultural field, which is the author as a producer. And then I'll be I've taken up a particular instance of from the Indian soil as far as the Marxist concept has been incorporated and applied in the culture or aesthetics of India, which is like Indian historiography, a revision of that by Ranajit Guha. So all this will be talked about from slide number 15 to 19. And then I'll be coming to the applications section. I'll be taking up 3 texts. The 2 are very familiar with, I hope, with everybody. The first is The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. The second is the short story by Guy de Maupassant called The Necklace. And then last is not too familiar, but I think that this will be a good food for thought for all of us. This is a prose poem by Charles Baudelaire, the French poet, named Crowds. This application part, or as I said, a dialectics part, will be covered from slide number 20 to 22. So this is the mapping of the lecture. Let's start with the topic Karl Marx, how Marx thinks about Marxism, and what we understand by the term Marxism theoretically. So first of all, I'd like to bring your attention to the fact that I do not think Marx was so much concerned about whether an institution, a theoretical institution, could be built on his name. So he says that all I know is that I'm not a Marxist. This he is writing to his son-in-law Paul Lafarge in 1981 in a letter. So he himself did not believe in erecting some theoretical edifice called Marxism, but yes, there were innumerable followers of Karl Marx who thought thought it to be a necessity, both a necessity and a duty to them to elaborate, interpret, reinterpret, compile, and publish the innumerable writings by Karl Marx. So basically, Marxism as a theoretical, a combination of a theoretical combination of theoretical approaches was not much there during Karl Marx's lifetime. Rather, this set of approaches to Marx was much more developed after his death, with his lifelong friend Friedrich Engels, collecting all the manuscripts, most of the manuscripts after Marx's death, and attempted to publish them all of a sudden, all of them at a go. Some of them were published. Some of them were published much. I mean, during the lifetime of Friedrich Engels. Some of them were published after the death of Engels. So later, there were editions by such Marxist leaders as Vladimir Lenin and then Stalin, to these writings. Fine. So basically, Marxism as a concept was built, to my understanding, after Marx's death in 1883, when Engels started, publishing the unpublished war. Most of them were unpublished till that point in time, was published to the world. Then when Hegel was, but then there was a problem in publication, in collecting them all and publishing, because Marx's handwriting was very bad. Fine. And there is an anecdote about Marx losing a job of a clerk because of his handwriting. Fine. And the second is that they were so scattered that even a Prussian spy could not find out what he wanted to find out after gate crashing Marx's home. So so he says that this is so huge a body and so scattered that I could not find out what I wanted to find. Fine. So so you can see that when Engels could gather all this, and then Lenin and published them, then Lenin basically tried to put our focus on, or bring our focus on, the three sources and three components or component parts of Marxism, which he thought to be very important in the whole Marxist literature for that matter. First of all is Marxist economics, which is Marxist thoughts on economics and how economics changed after Marx had given his inputs. Fine. The second is dialectical materialism, and the third is historical materialism, which both of these are Marx's revision of Hegelian dialectics. And I'll be discussing them later, so I'm leaving them as they are here in this slide. Fine. Then coming to Joseph Stalin, he had an urge to to use Marxism as a tool to retain his rule over the Soviet Marxist Soviet. Fine. So he rather focused more on Engels and his formulation and interpretation of Marx and Marxism and communism than Marx himself. Fine. So in some cases, there were differences between Friedrich Engels' thinking and Marx's thinking, or Friedrich Engels' interpretation or reinterpretation of what Marx said, or wrote. Then Stalin, for this specific purpose, was in favor of projecting Engels more than Marx. Fine. In many cases. So Friedrich Engels is most of the cases is known as a systemic socialist, or a socialist who thought about society in a systemic way, and a philosopher. Whereas Marx is thought to be a materialist economist in most of these cases. So as this implication of social mechanism was lying, the possibility of a social mechanism was lying with Friedrich Engels. So Stalin was more keen to project Engels as the founder and the proliferator of Marxism more than Marx himself. So this is all about Marx and his relationship to Marxism, a set of approaches developed after Marx's death, but based on Marx's works. Now I'm coming to the concepts. For the first concept is that of dialectics. And to start with or to conceptualize dialectics, it's not enough if we start with Marx. Rather, we need to go back to the founding father of dialectics, that is G.W.F. Hegel. Fine. So Marx himself, said or wrote rather, that I openly avowed, in capital, I openly avowed myself as the pupil of that mighty thinker Hegel. So he openly, accepts the influence of Hegel in his own thinking. Fine. And Hegel is regarded as the founder or the father figure as far as this dialectics as a concept is concerned. So what is dialectic? Dialectic is a word which means logical conversation. Fine, logical conversation. So there are two implications as far as this interpretation or this receipt of dialectic as a meaning is concerned. First is logical, so it should be based on reason. And the second is conversation. There should be no one-sided talk in that. There should be a talk or a discussion that the inputs in which the inputs will come from both of the, at least both of the sides, like in our case, the audience and the speaker, in both of these sides. So Hegel's principle of idealism, the speculative understanding of reality, is based on this dialectical concept. First, on the basis was a reason, and the second as a system of a progressive system, or system on which progress can be measured. Fine. So as a process. Fine. Now I've written, and you can see the principle of idealism, speculative understanding. What are these words all about? Principle of idealism. Now idealism, Hegel thought idealism as the basic principle. Idealism is derived from the root word idea. So for Hegel, idea was the nutshell of how we can think about the world. So his basis of analysis or analyzing the world was idea. And this, when he thought about idea as the basic principle of the world's existence, then it was termed as idealism, because then he, on the basis of this principle, he theorized the whole concept of idea, idea as the basic principle of the world, of looking at the world, of understanding the world. And this is speculative, because speculative understanding, because ideas are there in our mind, and through mind we try to understand, through rationality we attempt to understand. So they are speculative because they were not material. They were speculations, and going that went on in a that go on in a mind in order to understand a particular phenomena in the world. So speculative means reflective, through the understanding of reason and through application of mind. So the principle of idealism or idea is the basis of the dialectical concepts developed by Hegel himself. Fine. And the two bases was a reason, which is Eleatic, means which developed within for the first time within this Hellenic, small Hellenic town of Ilia. Fine. So there was a group of thinkers in Ilia who tried to base the perception of the world on the basis of reason. So reason he takes from Ilia, and process he takes from the Ionian Islands. Fine. So both of them were parts of ancient Greece, and they formulated their own arguments as far as the Greek thinking, ancient Greek thinking is concerned. So in the science of logic, Hegel says that it is in the dialectic that, as it is here understood, that is the grasping of opposites in their unity, or of the positive in the negative, that speculative thought consists. So whole idea of the world is based on the opposites of the opposites on the opposites or opposite components, and on their unity. Fine. So there is two things that is important in Hegelian dialectic. First is the existence or the conversation or the dialogue between the opposite components of our existence, which Marx will call contradictions. Fine. In our existence. And then there is an upgradation, there is a progress, a further development of and resolution of these opposites in the form of a unity. Fine. So so very often he talks about idea as spirit, or in original German he talks about Geist, G-E-I-S-T, Geist. Now, Geist is both mind and spirit. Fine. So here he talks about mind, or ideas generated out of mind, as Geist. Fine. So basically, in Hegel's formulation of dialectics, what spirit is referred to is basically is consciousness or knowledge. Fine. And this is elaborated in his phenomenal work called The Phenomenology of Spirit in 1807. So here see, in most of the cases, this dialectics is presented as in its very crude form, like, and through the triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. I have not, incorporated this triad in my lecture, simply because, I think Hegel did not put it in that way when he, wrote about it in the Phenomenology of Spirit. First of all, the second is that, this triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, that is a very simplistic triad. Rather, there is complex layers of relationships between the opposites that he is talking about, and there is also complexity in forming the whole as well. So he basically talks about, instead of this thesis and antithesis, he basically talks about the subjective spirit, which is related to our own consciousness, individual consciousness, are related to our being, our selfhood, and the objective spirit, which is related to the nature, means the atmosphere surrounding us. So suppose I myself think about something, that is a subjective spirit, but when I think about an object, for example, the bottle that lies just beside me. So when I think about this bottle, this is a part of objective spirit, or my thinking or my reflection on the nature. Fine. So this is objective spirit. But thing is that subjective spirit and objective spirit means my own self and the nature outside me. They are not independent realities, or independent, even conceptual realities. They are not independent. They do not have independent existence. Rather, there is also always an interdependence, a dialogue between this subjective spirit and objective spirit. I think this is where this the thesis and antithesis part of the triad has been derived from. That thesis is self, which is regarded as the origination or the original point of starting a thought process. Then objective spirit, I am thinking about outside. Then that is antithesis, which is supposedly an opposite to myself, but at the same time, which is a collaborator of myself as well, as far as my thinking is concerned. So there is this opposites in form of subjective spirit and objective spirit, which is crudely probably called as thesis and antithesis. And then there is this is by resolving these oppositions or contradictions in Marxist term, we are moving towards the higher level, which is called the absolute spirit, or a complete total union of the two, where this opposition is resolved, and a total unity is achieved. Fine. And this is done through art and religion, as Hegel proposes. Fine. But one important, so this is a comparatively more complex structure, as they are thought of in the crude model of this triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So the first step of that complexity comes from the theoretical understanding that Hegelian spirits are not independent spirits, but they are related through the concept of sublation, or in German, which is called Aufheben. Aufheben or sublation is a concept which tries to develop all these ideas together. To cancel or to abolish means that when, let me take up the example of this once again, this crude example of thesis. So I think we generally think that when antithesis is there, then thesis is cancelled. And by cancelling thesis, antithesis rise up to the next level, and it becomes a thesis at the next level. And then you know another set of antithesis appears in relation with the second level of thesis, which was basically at the first level was the antithesis. Fine. So it's there is an idea that it is completely cancelled. The first level thesis is completely cancelled or abolished in order that the antithesis at the first level should become more developed, and in a higher level it itself becomes the thesis. But one interesting thing to note in the concept of Aufheben is that sublation also means to preserve or to retain. So here is the importance of Hegelian dialectics. So these components means spirits, when subjective spirit is opposed to objective spirit and is forming, is developing more and going into a higher stage to form the absolute spirit or absolute union of the two, then there is both the cancellation of the former idea, former thesis, and also which is then which gives away then to the antithesis, which becomes the thesis at the next level, but also preserving some of the important components from both the cancelled spirits, fine, in order to achieve the higher reality. So it means both to cancel, to progress, and to preserve. And there is the importance of Hegelian dialectics. It will mean both progression, then totality to form a union of the opposites, to completely be able to resolve the contradictions, and then sublation of the opposite categories means both the retainment, the preservation, and cancellation. Fine. So this is why I told you this is a little bit complex idea. Then it can be projected through the triad, simple triad of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Fine. But what is Marx's opposition to this idea of spirit? Marx says that Hegel thought that the world can be perceived as not as things but as ideas. So he says he is actually mystifying the world, and there where the dialectic suffers in Hegel's hands. But that does not in any way prevents Hegel to be the first to present its general form, means the general form of dialectics of walking in a comprehensive and conscious manner. Fine. So with these three ideas, progression, totality, and sublation, that we are going to look forward to Marx's own versions of dialectics, the first of which is dialectical materialism, and after that will come the concept of historical materialism. So he says, Marx says that Hegel basically stressed on what? On idea as the world. So for Hegel, world was full of spirits or ideas or concepts. So the whole world was in our mind. So Hegel, Marx's objection was that Hegel was always missing out one important aspect of the world, that the world is basically made of things, of materiality, of human beings, as somebody who works, somebody who produces, somebody who takes up several activities of animals, of trees, of inanimate objects. All of them were objects. But this objectivity or this thinginess of the world is a paradigm that was missed out by Hegel in his conceptualization of dialectics. For Hegel, dialectics was a matter of mind, whereas for Marx, dialectics is a matter of matter. And he says, without the existence of matters outside, you cannot think about them. So matters are the basic things. And we should start approaching dialectics or, these oppositions, then the totality of these oppositions, etc., etc. We should start thinking about it, or we should start approaching about them from a material point of view, from the point of view of things as they exist in the world, not as ideas as we perceive them in our minds. So he famously says that with him, means with Hegel, dialectics, it means dialectics is standing on its head. It must be inverted to discover the rational kernel within the mystical shell. So he says there was the application of reason in dialectics, but the reason, the whole concept of reason was inverted as Hegel perceived dialectics. If we apply a proper reason, then we should think that we should approach the world or the meaning of the world from a materialistic point of view, not making it up, not putting it upside down and making it standing on its head by starting with world as idea, because ideas cannot exist independently of the matters, because it's the matters on the basis of which ideas are formed. So this dialectical materialism is a concept that is developed in its first instance for sure by Karl Marx and obviously by Friedrich Engels, but this term as a terminology was first probably used by Georgy Plekhanov in The Meaning of Hegel written in 1891 and published in 1908. So once again, like Marxism, dialectical materialism, although which is the core of Marxist thought, was not at least termed by Karl Marx himself. It was termed as a concept, as a Marxian concept, much later by Georgy Plekhanov. Fine. So the revision revision of Hegelian dialectics through dialectical materialism consists these things, these points. First, this puts forward a communist world view. Means the communist world view is what? That to approach the reality of the world as, in the sense, a scientific and in the form of a natural philosophy. Natural means the philosophy that can be directly inferred from the nature, and nature means the material existence of the entities, not the ideational aspect of it, because it's the human beings which are only endowed with a mind or a brain. None other in the nature is endowed with something called brain, in which ideas reside. So their point of view is a scientific point of view based on a natural philosophy, or a philosophy that is directly derived from the nature as it exists in materiality. So it does not reduce matters to material matters or material world into ideas. Rather, it starts its approach with matters or material world. So they propose that they are not only, I mean, material world or matter and ideas, they are not only different, but they are oppositional too. In Hegel, they were similar. They were at least synonymous. And this is why there could be a direct relationship between between idea and the matter. This is why by Hegel, at least the interpretation of the world was possible through the through employing the ideas. Fine. Then he says that material world becomes the base at it can exist without ideas, but not the vice versa. This I have already explained. So although this gives an impression that through materiality, Marxism is only talking about quantifying the whole thing, but at the final instance, which is crudely the final synthesis of Marxist dialectics, it's basically its focus on quality or a revolutionary change, a basic shift about how the world exists, a change from little quantitative shifts from a big shift in the form of revolution, a complete change, a complete alteration, a qualitative alteration from the world from the clutches, recovering the world from the clutches of the bourgeois and giving it to the proletariat class. So this is a complete overhauling of the existing structure. So this is a qualitative change too. So although they start from quantity, the matter, their final goal is to reach the qualitative change, which is popularly known as revolution. Fine. So three laws of dialectical materialism are transformation from quantity to quality, as I just explained, then unity of the opposites. These opposites are not ideational opposites or the opposites as concepts, but they are realistic opposites, materialistic opposites, as they form of contradictions. Fine. And then the third is very important principle, negation of the negation, which I have already explained when I was talking about Hegel, that the cancellation of a thesis leads to is done by the antithesis. So the cancellation of both the categories of subjective spirit and objective spirit, that is done through the cancellation of both. So its antithesis comes to cancel or to negate thesis. This is negation. The first negation of the negation has two negations. The first negation is the cancellation of the thesis at the first place. Negation of the negation is that then there will be progress and we will try to reach a higher plane, and on that higher plane or at that higher level there will be a bigger totality which will negate once again the antithesis in the preceding level. So it's like tier-like structure, 1, 2, 3. First tier there was a thesis called A. A is negated by A plus. A plus is negated by A minus. Then A minus becomes a new thesis at the second tier, which is like B or B plus. B plus then is negated by B minus, etc., etc. But then there will be finally a big X, suppose, in the form of a totality that will negate all the preceding negatives for that matter, or negations for that matter. So the final totality will be achieved through the negation of the negation, and communism is that final synthetic point in Marxist thought, whereas absolute spirit or the final a complete union of the subjective spirit and the objective spirit. That is the final synthetic point in Hegelian dialectical system. So now he is coming to what can be called the more economic base of Marxist thought. He is now turning towards history. History is what? The time in which he was residing, or the time which preceded him, or the time that will come after his death or after he is no more. So he is now concentrating on history and how this materialistic world, or the world not comprised of ideas, but of matters that can be approached from the point of view of history or the time. He says that this, in order to live, in order that men have to, or human beings have to survive, they have to relentlessly create and produce material environment. For example, if I am residing at this point in time in Patna, I need a house to live in. I need to procure food for myself. So house, food, etc. All these form together, all these form my material existence. But I have to produce these material conditions in order to live, exist actually in the line in history. Fine. Means at that point in time, the kind of with the kind of prices that that are there with lying with commodities, or simply there I need to procure things and they have some prices at this point in time. So if I can earn that much of money, then I'll only be able to procure these things for me. So it's like earning at this point in time, living in a house which is built in the contemporary times, procuring food which is a contemporary reality. Foods, for example, today there is this delivery through Zomato and all. Fine. So I use all these channels to procure food as well. So although they are virtual channels, but they have some basis to the material production of them. Like in restaurants, there will be people who will cook this food for us. There will be these delivery boys who will rush to the restaurants and will bring food to me, actually driving a motorcycle. So the motorcycle runs. The motorcycle runs on the road instead of they fly in the world of idea. So he is telling that in order to produce this material existence for ourselves, we need to keep our focus on the historicity of the materiality. Fine. So he's basically terming the base of this materiality as economics. He is telling us the material production system, which is related obviously, always obviously, with money in today's concept, or with value, economic value as ever. Fine. So he is basing or preparing the base of this material existence in the form of this economic base. Fine. So he is basically telling us that we exist here, we exist through our relations to the society. Society's relations of production themselves correspond to a definite stage of development of society's material productive forces. Productive forces means what? Through which this production of materiality is possible. Like labor forces, there are people who gives their labor in order to produce a thing. Like if I order a pizza, there will be cooks at the restaurants who actually cook this food. Then there will skill and knowledge will be needed for that. So all these are part of labor force. Then raw materials, like for cooking pizza, you need to have a pizza base in form, which is a kind of a bread. Fine. So all these materials are raw materials. They will be needed, and there will also be needed a relationship between the between the owner of the restaurant and the labors of the restaurant. Fine. So all these three things, the first is labor forces, the second is raw materials, and the third is the relationship of production. All these three things are determining the system of production. Fine. So society's material productive forces are very important at a particular historical period in order to grasp this historical materialism. Fine. So historical materialism is basically basing our analysis of the world with the economic reality and the production system, material production system of our life. Fine. So the mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. So whoever we are, whatever we are, should be thought about through the economic material reality, the process of production of that materiality. So this is all about historical materialism. I have written so much here. Fine. This is only to help you understand and further to write your exams, because I think one of the basic objectives of this lecture series is also to enable you to write in exams. So if you look at this slide, I've prepared this, although this slide is looking very clumsy and full of information, so much stuff is put into it, but there is a clarification that if you take for example a screenshot of this slide, you'll be able to gather much information that will enable you to write exams on this particular topic, for example historical materialism. So I'm not going to read out everything or elaborate on everything that is written on a slide. Rather, I'd like to to focus on particular thing, and the rest is up to you to to gather from these slides. Fine. So now we are coming to capital, commodity, and value. When he is talking about the material base of our existence is economics, so there will be money that will be involved, economy that will be involved. So he is first talking about capital. What is capital? Capital is simply money. Fine. But money not in the form of a thing. Money not as objects like notes, like sikkas. So they are all money, but he is not approaching money as only a thing, as it was always thought about. Rather, he is talking about money or capital, which is a matter of material production by the industrial society. So capital was always there. Whenever there was exchange, there was capital in some form of or the other. But capital as a part of this production process, that became the characteristic of the industrial society. Because since the time of industrial society, capital started dominating all spheres of our existence. Fine. So his idea of capital is quite different from thinking about money, for example, in very generalized term. Money not as a thing, but money as a when he terms money as capital as a part of this huge production system, which needs to be produced, which is not naturally out there, through the process of production, through the process of exchange, which is circulation of commodities, which is employing the labor of different people. So and marketization of the produces of that labor. So all this process, all of these components of a production process, that they are attached with the concept of capital. The second is we think that capital exists or existed in every society in the same form, but he says that capital predates capitalism. This is for sure. Capitalism, even before the capitalism came as a driving force of this world, capital existed. But capital in the particular form as it governs the whole world nowadays became existent from the industrial society. So there are two differences in his thinking about capital, that this capital is very different from the capital that existed, say for example, during the time of barter economy or the exchange economy. I give you, I am teaching you, and you will give me, if you are a tailor, if you will give me a shirt. Fine. So even these were capitals in the barter economy. But this concept about this thinking about capital does not exist nowadays. Why? Because capital and products means the value of my teaching and the value of the shirt that you give me for wearing, they were at some point or the other, they were or equivalent in terms of their in terms of the labor that were attached with them in the barter economy system. But nowadays they are related to the price tags, and this price tags that converts them from a produce of the labor to a commodity to be sold in exchange of money or capital in the market. So he says, as far as commodity is concerned, that this is a commentary on Marxist thought by Tom B. Baltimore, that all human societies must produce their own material conditions of existence. That is, in order to live, we must produce, our material conditions of production. But commodity is the form that products take when this production is organized through exchange. So when we are organizing this, we are exchanging them, and when we are putting them for sale in the market, then only the products, they are becoming commodities. And how are they valued? There are two basically values that he is talking about. The first is use value. Use value means what? A fan, by rotating tirelessly, gives us air. So this is the use value of the fan. But a fan is sold in for example 1200 rupees. So that is a price tag that makes this object which gives us air, fine, that that is then transformed into a commodity with this price tag. So it, at the second level, it has a different kind of price tag, and it has a different level of value or valuation, that is the price. So use value is, it can satisfy some human want by itself, but exchange value is what? It has the power to command other commodities in exchange, in power of exchangeability. So this is in case of barter economy, that it had the power to generate a process of exchange. Just a second, I need to change the settings of the connection. Shoykot, are you listening to me?
Yeah, please tell me. Please tell me.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, am I still connected? I need to change the settings of my SIM in order, because this the data was almost on the verge of getting finished. So I changed it to another SIM.
Okay, fine.
Am I still connected?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. So so exchange value is that your internet connection is.
Yeah, now it's showing that you are having little trouble with your internet.
So can I switch off my video? Can I switch off my video? Shoykot?
Yes, you can. If you are having internet issues, you can.
Okay. So let me switch off. Can you please switch off my video for me? Hello.
Yes, I have done.
Okay, thank you for the interruption. So so every commodity has two kinds of values. First is its use value. The second is how it can actually serve us, and the second, how it the market, that is how it is priced and how it is sold through that price in the market. So it has two kinds of values. Now an important concept that comes in is alien to the economic Marxism or Marxist economics, and also for the aesthetic Marxism as well. Fine. So he is telling us that these commodities are being take these commodities can take up their values through a process of circulation in the market. Fine. So unless and until produced products are actually sold in the market, they cannot have their values. Fine. So this is very natural. If I cannot procure a fan, how can I know how efficient is it in airing a kind of a big room as I am sitting right now in. Fine. So the point is, there should be a process of circulation. There must be a process of circulation in order the procure the use value and the exchange value as well. So this is a process which is called a circuit of capital, through which commodities reach us and value is assigned to them. Suppose I am producing this ceiling fan, and I have some money with me. So I am employing that money in the production of this ceiling fan. So this becomes the productive capital. And the capital means money that I have to produce this fan, that is not enough. I need to have labor power, and I also need to have means of production. Labor power is what? There will be somebody who will actually work for the production of this ceiling fan. Secondly, there will be his knowledge and skill which will be employed in the production of this ceiling fan. So unless and until there is an electrical engineer or an electrician, a fan cannot be produced. So their labor means their actual labor and their skills and knowledge that will be required to produce that fan. And there will also be means of production, means machineries. The machines will be needed to produce it. Fine. So through all these things, productive capital, labor power, and means of production, that we through this that form the production process altogether, we are producing a commodity. But the commodity is not yet a commodity until and unless it is ready to be sold in the market. It is ready to be exchanged through money. So it is produced, and a price is determined for it to be, in order to be sold in the market. So that is the commodity capital. Fine. So that makes it commodity. But there is a gap between the productive capital and the commodity capital. Productive capital means the money that I employed in the production of the fan. Commodity capital is what? Price with which it is sold in the market, the price at which it is sold in the market. This is very natural that I produce a fan only to get profit out of it after selling it. So if I, for example, employ like 500 rupees in the production of a fan, it is quite natural that I will determine its price at least the double to that or triple to that. So 12, at least there will be some excess, some surplus when we are determining the price of the commodity, that or the product with a price tag. So there is a gap between the productive capital and the commodity capital. So what we generally, this is surplus money. This is called surplus money, or this is profit. Now there is no problem until this point in time, but the problem arises when we increase the exchange value of the commodity, but we do not pay the labors properly. So there is this use value of the product, which was equivalent to the labor power, the labor actually employed in the production of that. But there will be, when I increase as a capitalist, when I increase as a businessman, when I increase the value, the market value of a commodity, then what happens? Then we are not keeping this equivalence intact between the use value of the product and the labor power that was employed. Use value is devalued or hypervalued in only with the end that the exchange value or the price should be increased more and more, and labors should be paid less and less. So there is this this is called the abstraction of labor, that we do not valuing the labor power properly, and we have an arbitrary mechanism of determining the price tag, which will only serve the interests of the producer, the capitalist, the businessman. So by this abstraction of labor, we can think of the alienation of labor, that who I am. See, if I'm teaching you, and if I'm underpaid continuously, then I will lose my interest in teaching, in the task of teaching. So I am alienated or separated or distanced from the production process or the product. So this is called alienation or separation or distancing. And the theory of surplus value is very important as well, that this is through an arbitrary exercise, excess amount is rendered as the price of the commodity, which we as consumer, we do not have any control over that, and we as the producer, actual producer, the laborer, we do not have any control over that, and that leads to the exploitation of whoever is producing something at in every sphere of our existence. So that is very important. Fine. Alienation, or the theory of abstraction of labor and thereby distancing the laborers from the production process, that leads to a kind of an antagonism or an enmity between the producers, I mean the laborers, and the actual producers or the laborers, and the capitalists. Fine. Who are employing their money in order to gain more profit out of it. So then I'm coming to the base and superstructure. You have already formed an idea of how Marx is talking about materiality of the existence. He's tracing materiality as the basic reality. And what kind of a materiality? Economic materiality as the basis of our existence. So the base is the material base, the economic base. This is called the base. And superstructure is whatever is built on the basis of this economic base or material base is called superstructure. Like, for example, as human beings, we not only sustain our lives on the basis of the materiality that we have, like on the basis of, for example, the shirt, the bottle, water, or flora or fauna for that matter. But we also have culture. We also have education. We also have knowledge system. So we also have religion. So these knowledge systems, for example, schools and colleges, the knowledge production system, books, songs, dances, then religions, etc., etc. According to Marx, they are all based on the basic structure of economy, the basic production system of this material conditions of the life. So superstructures or these soft cultural powers or institutions, they're built on the basis of this base called economy or the production system for that matter. So this is a quotation to be noted, and I'll try to read it out because this very succinctly give you the idea about base and superstructure. What is this? In the social production of their life, men enter into definite relations that are indispensable and independent of their will. Relations of production which correspond to a definite stage of development of their material productive forces. So in order to live, to be very to simplify this, in order to live, we must produce things. The sum total of this production constitutes the economic structure of the society, the real foundation on which rises a legal and political superstructure, and to which correspond definite forms of social consciousness. So there is legality, law enforcement agencies in our country, the country itself, then political parties and the political existence of us. All of them are based on what? This economic foundation, the real foundation of our existence, which is called the economic structure of the society. This is base. the mode of production of material life conditions, the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. This is called, it is not the consciousness of man that determines their being, but on the contrary, it is the social being that determines their consciousness. So he is keeping on, inverting Hegel's propositions that there is only idea, and the idea corresponds to the material existence. Here he is telling us that material existence or economic existence is the basis on which all these superstructures or the soft cultural institutions, they are built. Fine. So these are called superstructure. These soft cultural institutions are called superstructure, which is kind of these institutions are made of consciousness, idea. They are superstructure, but the infrastructure, as Althusser will call it, or the base, is the economic material conditions and the conditions of production. So there are three very important aspects of this complex form. First is the base is the sum total of the productive economic relationships, not individual elements such as working class. So we cannot segregate different aspects or constituents of this base. There is a labor, there is as individual and as a representative of the labor class. There is a capitalist who is employing his capital. There is a machine which is producing a fan. There is a product or commodity called fan. All of them together create what is regarded as the economic base. The second is the superstructure develops unevenly in different societies. The culture of America, to be very simple, to be put very simple in very simple words, the culture of America at the given point in time, say in 2021, is not same as that is of India. So superstructure or cultural components, they develop unevenly in different societies. And base and superstructure, they are not independent of each other, rather they are reciprocal. They have also a kind of conversation or reason dialogue in between them, which means that they have also formed a system of dialectics in between themselves. So these are three very important aspects of dialectics. Now ideology is another important thing. Now when we say that there is alienation of labor, and when we say there is surplus value, then we also imply that the value of the production is not equal to the value of the commodity which is going to be sold in the market. So there is a gap between the use value and the exchange value. So how is this manipulated? How the cost of the product increased? Say, for example, by advertising of its efficiency. That this Hegel's fan is the best fan of the world. That gives you the kind of air which is as fresh as that you get in Kedarnath, for that matter. So you are enticed to buy a Hegel's fan for that matter. So what is this mechanism? This mechanism of enticing, of advertisement, this is done through these soft cultural institutions, which try to hide the actual production cost and the actual use value of the fan. You know very well that the fan cannot give you the kind of air that is available at the top of the hill in Kedarnath, but still you are enticed, you believe, and even if you do not believe, you buy the fan. Fine. So what is this? This is called the hiding of the actuality of the material conditions. So he is telling us that there is an inversion of the reality as production as the production of commodities or the exchange value is concerned. Fine. He, for the first time in his life, talked about the inversion of thinking about the world or analyzing about the world as far as Hegel was concerned, that with him the world was lying upside down. But he is stretching that further into the domain of commodity production, and he is telling it's, although the basic materiality of our existence should determine the superstructure, it has started the absolutely in the inverse direction, that the superstructures are defining and determining the use value, and they naturally increase the value in order to give more profits to the capitalist. So he is telling us that there are three phases of the concept of ideology. I'm not going into that because time is passing fast. I'm coming to this thing. He is telling that inversion is ideology. This illusion of putting world in upside down position, this is done through ideology, through the soft cultural institutions, and this is called ideology. So ideology is what will be called as false consciousness in the history of and class consciousness by Georgi Lukács much later. So if the legal system is assuring us about equality and freedom, we know that in materiality, in reality for that matter, that this to that extent of freedom and equality does not exist. Fine. So at the material bottom, the conditions of inequality and unfreedom prevail. Had we started with the basic materiality of our reality, then we would not have been deceived. So deception is what ideology does through the institutions of superstructures. Fine. So this is all about ideology. Then class structure and conflict. What is class then? You have already conceived the idea between the use value and the surplus value, between the value of a labor and how the value of labor is alienated or distanced from the product, the produce, and from the price in which it is going to be exchanged in the market. So there is very specifically a distancing of the labor who are producing the commodities with or from the producer, means the employers of capital. Fine. So they form different classes. As far as the economic term is concerned, the person who is employing capital for the production of something, he is called a capitalist, or she is called a capitalist. As far as the cultural institutions are concerned, he or she will be termed as a bourgeois or a member of the bourgeois. Whereas the person who is producing, be it cultural capital or be it a material capital, he or she will be simply be termed as a labor or a member of the class which is called proletariat. So the communism sees the history of all hitherto existing society as the history of class struggles. There will be clash of interests between the labor who is underpaid and the capitalist who wants more and more profits out of their labor, and that forms the basis of history of all times. So he is telling that this capitalist class with the help of the superstructures and base in both ways, through the mechanism of economics or the production process and through the cultural mechanisms. They are making the mass into a class of proletariat. So there will be two great classes. The first is bourgeois, which is a kind of superstructural term for the capitalists or the business people, and proletariat, who this bourgeois and proletariat who are directly responsible for the production of the commodities. So society as a whole is more and more splitting up into these two great hostile camps, into classes directly facing each other, bourgeois and proletariat. So he says Marx's dream is that if bourgeois and capitalists, they are, trying to dominate the whole world, a revolution will ensure a quality shift in the way the world runs, will ensure the dominance of the proletariat. The laborers who actually produce the commodities, they should rule. Whose sweat and blood is directly employed into the production of commodities, they should rule, not the person who is making profit out of it. But he is also talking about the middle class in the theories of surplus value. The more there is the surplus value, the more there is a positive outcome of that some of its chunk goes to the person who is actually employing their labor, and a section of them is getting economically uplifted. So that forms the middle class, which is situated midway between the workers on one side and the capitalists and the landowner on the other. But he is looking at the middle class as a part of bourgeois because they raised all their weight upon the working basis, and at the same time increase the social security and power of the upper 10,000. So they are also, this middle class is although negotiating between these two great classes, but they are also inclined towards the bourgeois. So what is communism? Communism is the final synthesis in the classical Marxist dialectics. So absolute spirit was the final point or the final goal of Hegelian dialectics, whereas in Marxist dialectics, communism is the final synthesis. What is communism? Communism is a sum total of all of these goals, as mentioned in the Communist Manifesto, published in 1848. The abolition of the distinction between town and country, of the family, of the carrying on of industries for the account of private individuals, and of the wage system, the proclamation of social harmony, the conversion of function of a state into more superintendence of production. All these proposals point society to the disappearance of the class antagonisms. These proposals, therefore, are of purely utopian character. He knows that all these proposals, abolition of private property, absolute vanishing of class antagonisms, state will not participate in the process of favoring the capitalist or the bourgeois, etc., and state will only be a supervisor of the production process, etc., etc. All they cannot become a reality, and they are utopian in nature. But still he thinks of that day when that kind of a qualitative shift will come. This is why we are talking about a shift from quantity to quality. We start from little changes, but then we aim to reach the highest qualitative shift. This is not possible. If this is not possible, this we can always free to cherish a dream for that. We should always, in order to progress, cherish the dream of an egalitarian society, in the society which will be which will be filled with the tenets like and the actual practices like equality and freedom and fraternity. Then only we can progress. Otherwise, we will regress in the scale of our civilization. In the field of commerce, then capital might be accumulated with in the hands of a few, but that will not be the progress. Progress for all will be to taking all of us together, and that will be the qualitative shift that he aims at. Although it is an imagination of the possibility of total social transformation, but that imagination should stay with us even today, that we should build a better society, a classless society, a society based on the ideals, actual enlightenment ideals like equality, fraternity, and equality, freedom. Fine. So with this, we have completed the first section, the basic concepts. Now I am entering into aesthetic Marxism, which means how in this realm of literature and aesthetics and culture, that is a part of the superstructure, these concepts can be employed and can be applied in the analysis of the culture or literature, which is our sphere for that matter. Fine. This is simply saying how we can apply Marxist concepts, basic Marxist concepts, to the analysis of culture and literature. So this has been done in various ways. First of all, party literature, in the form of party literature in classical Soviet era. Literature will also will always follow these three dictums, as Vladimir Lenin has prescribed in his essay Party Organization and Party Literature in 1905. First is partynost, the author's commitment to the cause and the line of the party. Narodnost, simplicity and realism. This is realism. This should be realism. Realism to resist alienation and elitization. And Klassovost, which is an author's commitment to the class interest, means the interest of the working class. Fine. So these three tenets should be followed by an author in order to produce literature. Then commitment to realism. This is a controversial thing. When Georgi Lukács is talking about realism, he is looking at the realism from the point of view of the people who are in power. So his realism is favoring the people who are in power. And why he is favoring the people who are in power? Because he is writing all this in terms of the Soviet Russia, the classical Soviet Russia. So where already a revolution has taken place, and the more or less, at least, theoretically, the proletariat rule has already been established. So he is telling us to depict reality as it is, because it is already a reality of the working class people. So he is praising Thomas Mann, Balzac, Walter Scott, etc. He is also talking about reification of thingification, like all material existence is becoming a product, a commodity, a thing, the inhuman kind of effect that capitalism is exerting on us by transforming each and every sphere of existence in the form of a thing. Fine. So when Georgi Lukács is talking of realism, he is, in favor of producing reality as it is. But when Bertolt Brecht, kind of his cultural opponent, who comes in, he says that non-identification with reality and realism is basically should be the goal of a left-minded author or a cultural producer, because the final aim is revolution, and the revolutionary spirit can never be contained if the reality which has already been fixed by the ruling class that prevails in our society. So in changing the reality, or changing the reality, should be the goal of a revolutionary author. So he is, in effect, is reversing the whole idea of alienation. And in epic theater, he is basically talking about the alienation effect. He is telling us that the audience or the reader should always be consciously awake, so as not to receive the reality that is produced by the author. So the author should take care of the fact that he or she does not produce a reality which is identifiable. Rather, he should produce shock effects continuously. For example, in his epic theater, there was intervention made by digital gadgets, by a short, it is a play, but in between the play there will be dialogues directly with the audience. The actors will come down off the stage and walk among the audience. There will be sudden intervention by showing a clip of a film, by playing a music which is completely unrelated, might be. Even the audience are asked to smoke cigarettes, so that they are not engrossed by the production of reality on the stage. They always keep themselves at a distance from the reality that is produced on stage. So this was all about realism, the realism debate between Brecht and this was all about between a debate between debate on reality or realism between Lukács and Brecht. Then, base and superstructure, this concept has been applied in structural Marxism, like in Althusser. We'll be coming to that, so I'm skipping this thing right now. Or base and superstructure as treating the concept has been applied as in literature as superstructure, fine, which is a product of the material historical production system. For example, in his new historicism and cultural materialism. Then, capitalist society, commodity and alienation, these concepts were taken up by the exponents of Frankfurt School, like Herbert Marcuse, Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, Walter Benjamin, Jürgen Habermas, etc. So they are analyzing culture of their contemporary time through these concepts. Then ideology, subalternism, and center margin dyad. This is all taken up in by different thinkers by taking up different paradigms, like women's positions and rights, that led to the birth of Marxist feminism, like Angela Davis, Simone de Beauvoir, Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak, etc. Paradigm of colonialism and imperialism, Franz Fanon, Edward Said, Ranajit Guha, Dipesh Chakraborty, in post-colonialism. The paradigm of power as structure, Michel Foucault. Then paradigm of spectrality by Jacques Derrida. then an existentialist paradigm which has been taken by Jean-Paul Sartre in Being and Nothingness, and psychoanalytic Marxism by Freud. To some extent, he was also influenced by Marxism. So this is all about different concepts as they have been incorporated as analytical tools in literature and culture, in the analysis of literature and culture. Now, different schools and thoughts. The first concept is that of hegemony by Gramsci. Hegemony was basically a word which was conceived in the context of domination, the domination of a certain of a certain class, domination of a certain class, domination of the state, complete domination. For example, Mao Zedong used hegemonism to indicate a kind of domination by one country over another, which was a little bit different from imperialism. But hegemony, as Gramsci talks about, is about alliance between the subalterns. Who are subalterns? All who are somehow marginalized, repressed. So you can see how the idea of class structure or alienation that is being expanded by the concept of hegemony by Gramsci. He is talking about hegemony not in terms of absolute domination or absolute struggle between the classes. Rather, he is talking about alliance with hegemony as an alliance with junior partners. Why? Because he's in his study, he is actually concerned with two different poles of the communist rule. First, he is looking at his own historical situation, or the historical situation of the Communist Party of Italy in Italy, and he is also looking at the Communist Party, the rule of Communist Party in the Soviet Russia. So he is actually coming out with this idea when the Communist Party of Italy failed to form a government and to rule, actually to win the mandate to rule in Italy. So he is thinking about why their endeavors lacked, where their endeavors lacked, where they failed. And that led to an analysis or an understanding that until and unless there is an absolute alliance between the working class who are working in industries, the farmers or the peasantry, and the exponents of the superstructure, like the intellectuals, there cannot be a possibility of overhauling a bourgeois in power, a bourgeois structure in power, and to bring about a complete shift from the rule of the bourgeois to the rule of the proletariat. So his idea of hegemony is basically an expansion of the idea of the domination of the proletariat. He's basically asking them to come out of their orthodox shell and to form alliance between the different marginalized among the different marginalized sections. And the example was there in front of him in the form of the communist rule in the Soviet Russia. So in hegemony, there was three issues. The first is it grants a leading group in power to make choices and act collectively, the capacity known as agency. So it offers them an agency to make choices and act collectively. Commune as the basis of a commune, and this commune is formed by all the subalterns, by all the marginals taking together. It offers a chance to engage with culture of subaltern groups, means treating seriously those practices and rituals that they are meaningful to them. So there is a scope to look at the cultures and practices beyond the cultures and those of the proletariat or the working class people, or the people who are actually working as laborers in different factories. But there is no conclusive answer to how fundamental groups can limit their hegemonic activities of those it seeks to lead and restrict the expansive of its hegemony. So he is talking about expansive hegemony and limited hegemony. He is talking about that when we are thinking about hegemony in terms of domination by a particular section or a class, then it is restricted idea. When we are expanding it, then it becomes expansive hegemony, like in the form of alliance between different sections of the marginalized people. But then there, when the choice is there to include people, but the people from different sections, the subalterns of different sections who are included, how after inclusion they will act and react, that is there is no explanation in his concept of how to control and restrict the counter hegemonic power as posed by different subaltern groups who had already been included in the by the ruling class or the ruling section. Fine. So this is how he is talking about altering the concept of hegemony. Then ideology and state apparatuses. I already told you that Marx conceived ideology as the inversion of the reality. Fine. It's through ideology that the reality can be put can be put in a position that is upside down. Fine. By foregrounding the superstructure and by distancing with the base or the material conditions of production. But Althusser is coming back to the base once again, very vigorously. And he is telling, he is redefining base as infrastructure, which is made of three things, which I have already mentioned. First is productive forces, the labor power, skills, knowledge. Second is material of production, raw materials, tools, machines. And last is existing relations of production, relations or interactions between owners and the workers. And there is superstructure, which has two sections or two levels of existence. First is politico-legal system, means the legal system of our country or the political system of any state. And ideology, which is even softer, a variation of superstructure, like religious, legal, ethical, etc. Now, this is also legal. This is also legal. What is the difference between these two legalities? This legality is law enforcement agencies. For example, courts, penal codes of India, for example, for any state for that matter. But this is also a part of superstructure. But this legality is, suppose when a lawyer deliberates his or her view on some legal issue, then he is a legal intellectual. He is, foregrounding some kind of ideology or some kind of, or rather coming out with some kind of idea, his or her own idea, which will always be somehow or the other biased. Fine. So this biasness comes from the thing that is called by Lukács as false consciousness, that it is not the real. Whenever there is this intersection of ideology, there will be the distortion of the reality. Fine. So this is that legal thing. But there is a dialectical relationship between the infrastructure and the superstructure. So this is a three-tier structure. The base is infrastructure, and there are two, kind of stories above that. The first is the strictly political legal system, and the second is ideology. Both of them part of superstructures. So to maintain the control over and above the mass, the state, this is why he is a part of structural Marxism, because he makes the analysis, the base of his analysis, he makes the basis of his analysis in the form of state intervention, and he makes his analysis through a structural process, a structural method. So in order that state should maintain its hegemony over the working class, there are two operators. The first is repressive and the second is ideological. Repressive state apparatuses use force to maintain this hegemony, whereas ideological state apparatuses use soft power and soft tools like education in schools and colleges, images circulated in different media, including social media, religious establishments, the sermons preached by religious establishments, the ideas foregrounded by the civil society, etc. So these are ideological state apparatuses. Although they are different establishments, they have also a dialectical relationship, means an interdependence on each other. So there are two strands of ideology. The first is that ideology represents the imaginary relationship of the individuals to the real. Ideology is a consciousness which is false. There is some distance between the actual real condition and our imaginary relationship with the reality, so that we can identify ourselves with the reality. And the second is ideology has also a material existence, meaning that when we understand reality, we understand about the materiality through the lens of ideology. Fine. So it has a material existence as well. And ideology is something which hails all of us to be incorporated in the superstructure. It calls us, it influences us. So ideology is the influencer which is acting on all of us. Then a third concept or a third school is Frankfurt School. They criticize basically the theory of positivism, and they are the exponents of this school. They focus on how the positivist philosophy, that is empiricist philosophy, that is thinking about every sphere of existence in terms of quantifying it, which is one of the Marxist tendencies. They are basically with in the wake of science and technology, and criticizing this tendency of quantification and thingification of every sphere of our material existence. So they have serious objections against positivism. Why? Because they think that positivism is something that treats human beings as mere facts and objects. The second thing is that it gives us a partial perception about the world, conceives world as an immediate experience, that there is a superficial appearance, and something which is called content or some internal essence of it. They do not, identify this difference between essence and appearance, form and content. Their exclusive, stress is on the form, and they detach the sphere of knowledge from human interests. They are in the view that Marxism as a form of enlightenment thought had at the basic, or as the basis of the whole idea, or the whole theory. The basis of whole Marxist theory was all about freeing the people as a part of the enlightenment process. As the basis was to form an egalitarian society on the basis of equality, fraternity, and freedom. But by more and more objectifying the whole thing, we are basically deviating from that goal. So Marxism has remained no more a product of enlightenment as it was conceived for and by the human being, or by aiming the human emancipation. Fine. So it has never remained the same. So they are basically proposing a dialectical theory, which is known as the critical theory. The critical theory is both taking concerns of the real material conditions and also looking at also reconnecting these concerns with the actual human concerns, including human feelings and human sufferings. So they are giving us a cry to go back, clarion cry to go back to the basics of enlightenment, and that we have deviated from the the premise on which the enlightenment reason was erected. Rather, the reason has taken a different form nowadays. Fine. So now we are coming to something which is related directly to literature. Terry Eagleton analyzes how author can be producer. A writer is not simply who writes something and publishes it, but in order to give him the chance to write, he also needs, or she also needs, a readership, and also a book that he writes, or a story that he writes, that needs to be produced, and it goes through a production system. So author is not simply somebody who is writing and publishing, but author is also somebody who is a producer, and in terms in his or her turn, he is also produced. So there is direct correlation between the production system of literature with the production system as it existed in the market economy. So he is telling that in the contemporary, he is citing two texts by Walter Benjamin. First, the author as producer, and the second, Walter Benjamin, is the work of art in the art of mechanical reproduction. In both of them, Benjamin is talking about the author not getting devalued by the production system. Rather, as an author, it is the commitment of him to to distance himself from getting submerged in the system of production, and in turn getting submerged in the system of the commodity fetishism, in the logic of profit making by the publishing houses. And in order to do that, he or she must be able to continuously produce what he calls shock effect. This is in line with Bertolt Brecht and his epic theater. And he is proposing a technique which is called montage, which is connecting of dissimilars to shock an audience into sight. For Benjamin, a major principle of artistic production in the time of technological age, where there are only copies without an original. So how can an author or a literature sustain in the crowd of this copies and copies only without an original? In order to distance himself or herself from this pitiable reality of the market economy, he or she must be able to produce continuously shock effects so that he or she can be recognized as somebody unique. Then Ranjit Guha, in case of Indian historiography of the colonial times, has taken up how this bourgeois or the elite class, both of the Britain and of our own country, that is the neo-colonial bourgeois, they subjugated, they almost negated the role of the subaltern class or the working class of different sections, the marginalized classes of different sections, which actually form. Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So who actually forms the mass? Fine. Their history, their approach to their times, to their contribution to the freedom struggle, that were all excluded, and the domination of the bourgeois or the elite class, that is all that we get as the official version of Indian history of colonial struggle. We get only big names, but the people who actually fought on the street or on the fields, they are forgotten. So by subaltern history of India, Ranjit Guha is taking us back to those who actually fought on the ground. So he's pointing out the fact that the failure of Indian bourgeois to speak for the nation never was integrated into their hegemony. They never tried to collaborate with the workers. They had only led them, and the history was written by them as if they lead the whole freedom struggle. But people who actually on ground fought, they were excluded from this official version of colonial historiography of India. Now the last part of dialectics or applying, fine. The first is Merchant of Venice, and this is an analysis by Elliot Krieger. Krieger is telling that, you know, in Merchant of Venice, like in all other comedies, there is harmony. There was a harmony in the initial phase, in the opening phase. Then the harmony is disturbed, and towards the end the harmony is restored. This is the structure of all of the Shakespearean comedies. So here in Merchant of Venice, there is this disharmony. He starts with this disharmony that takes place in Portia's mind, that she could not marry somebody because of some conditions. already laid by her father. Then finally Bassanio comes in, and the harmony in terms of marriage is restored. There is this Jessica, who is daughter to Shylock. She flees with some of Shylock's wealth and marries Lorenzo. There is this disharmony, and towards the end, this disharmony is somehow restored to harmony. Fine. So there is a movement from disharmony to harmony. But at what cost? Elliot Krieger asks this question. He is showing us the difference between the two places. First is Belmont and the second is Venice. Till the fourth scene of fourth act of Merchant of Venice, Venice is something which is a part of, which is a site of this disharmony, whereas Belmont is a more idealistic a location where harmony is restored. But he rightly points out that it is at the cost of Shylock and Judaism that the harmony is restored in Belmont through the agents of bourgeois society like Portia, Bassanio, Jessica, Lorenzo. Until and unless there was this entry of Portia in the court, that Shylock was given relative freedom to speak about his own terms and conditions. But the moment Jessica, as a representative of the bourgeois society, enters it, the moment Shylock is defeated. So the point is that, in order to maintain the dominance of the bourgeois, Krieger analyzes that the harmony is a relative impression of ideological harmony is given here. So finally, the harmony that is achieved is a product of the false consciousness. So it had a cost through which or by which this harmony is restored, and that is the cost of Shylock as a Jew, and Shylock as somebody who has his feet grounded on the materialism. Unlike representatives of the bourgeois at Belmont, whose feet is set in the harmony of the immortal souls. So this emphasis he writes on harmony, especially through its association with heavenly hierarchies and the chain of being, protects the social position of the ruling class by attributing the arrangement of the social structure to an immaterial force outside of human action and control. The belief in harmony articulates the fantasy of the literature, or heaven itself sanctions and determines the extant class structure. So the sanction of the extant class structure, of the dominance of the bourgeois class, is coming directly from the heaven, and out an ideological structure completely alien to the material productive base of that time. So this is the analysis of the Merchant of Venice by Elliot Krieger. Now, next, I'll be talking about Guy de Maupassant's The Necklace, and this analysis is there in Andrew Rowcroft's book called Karl Marx. Fine. this he is telling us that this story takes up as its focus the paradigm of commodity fetish. And in this story, what happens that Mathilde, a woman of lower class, thinks high of herself and always tries to, always is unhappy with whatever she has and unhappy with the circumstances that she has. So Mathilde suffers ceaselessly because of her belonging to the low class, and always dreams for her elevation to an upper class. But it so happens that she and her husband, who works in the public instruction, in the Department of Public Instruction in the French government, go to a party, and there they lost a necklace which was borrowed. So in order to replace that necklace, they had to buy a new necklace, which cost like I think almost the 10,000 times of their income, maybe, fine, or more than that. So for 10 years, they had to repay the debts in several forms. And finally, when they had repaid all of these debts, crushing themselves under the indescribable poverty, then Mathilde came to know that the necklace that was lost was not original. It cost only, the cost of it was only 400 francs or 500 francs, whereas the replacement was costing like 36,000 or 40,000 francs. So this he analyzes as something that shows the the kind of cruel difference between classes prevailing at that point in time in the French society. Class antagonism, first of all. The second is commodity fetish, and here Maupassant writes, how strange and changeful is life, how small a thing is needed to make or ruin us. This thing is not a not a normal thing, not a general thing. This thing is commodity in the form of this jewelry, this diamond jewelry, that was enough to ruin their life. Fine. Sartre also talked about this story, and Sartre's Rowcraft is also quoting Sartre, while Sartre is analyzing the story as something which is kind of a vindication of the bourgeois society against the working class. It is Mathilde's desire to transgress her position as a working class wife that she is punished by the bourgeois society, who at no cost will allow her to get elevated to a member of the bourgeoisie. So it is a kind of crime and punishment, or sin and punishment structure that he is talking about. Fine. And Mathilde pays the price of her desire to get elevated to the bourgeois, to the status of a bourgeois member of a bourgeois society. Now coming to the third example, which is a poem by Charles Baudelaire called Crowds. This was an 1869 poem, and a prose poem which was included, which was analyzed in the Writer of the Modern Life, Essays on Charles Baudelaire by Walter Benjamin. Here he is employing Marxism with the spirit of the alienation effect that was proposed by Bertolt Brecht, or forwarded further by Walter Benjamin. So Benjamin here talks about the experience of a poet in a city, in a metropolis like Paris. He is talking about the poet as a producer, but he is not a poet, is not simply a producer of poems, but at the same time he is also a product of the historical material conditions that was in turn produced by the capitalist society, by the capitalist powers and the bourgeois society. So he is at the same time enjoys the privilege of being in a big city. He is getting enticed by the commodity fetish all over the city, but at the same time he is trying to produce the shock effect. He is changing the aesthetics of his poem, the structure of his poem, the technique of his poem, in order to sustain himself in the market. And he writes in this crowd. You see, this is a prose poem. It is almost not a poem. And in this almost not a poem, he writes, the poet enjoys the incomparable privilege of being able to be himself, of someone else or someone else, as he chooses. So he can be himself, he can be individual, but he is also a part of a crowd. He is an individual who is lost in the crowd, but still is fighting for retaining his individuality. So he is in the spirit of a flaneur or a casual stroller in the city who looks at different, achievements of a capitalist metropolis. He is both himself and not himself too. Like those wandering souls or flaneurs who go looking for a body, he enters as he likes into each man's personality. For him alone, everything is vacant. And if certain places seem close to him, it is only because in his eyes, they are not worth visiting. So he chooses, he discards. And in the process, he is chosen, he is discarded as well. So he is, Benjamin is telling us that for the first time with Baudelaire, Paris becomes the subject of lyric poetry. The poetry is no hymn to the homeland. It is not simply evoking a French poet's love or reference to the capital of his country, but rather the gaze of an allegorist as it falls on the city, the gaze of an alienated man. This is double gaze. A gaze towards himself, a gaze which can save his own personality, his own standpoint, his own outlook, his own existence as a poet, as a creator. But at the same time, this gaze is that of an alienated man who has distanced himself at the same time, who is deeply attached, because he is also, his persona is also being produced in this whole process. It is this gaze of the flaneur who whose way of life still conceals behind the mitigating nimbus of the coming desolation of the big city dweller. The flaneur still stands on the threshold of the metropolis as of the middle class. Neither has him in its power yet. Neither is he at home. He seeks refuge in the crowd. He is homeless because he's lost his home. But at the same time, he is seeking home or refuge in the crowd, from which he is trying to distance himself in order to save his individuality. So this is a kind of aesthetics that has been produced in terms of poetry, taking up the basic concept of alienation of labor, a basic concept by Marxism. So this is the end of this lecture. This quote is to be remembered by Karl Marx whenever we are looking at Marxism as some tool or an ideology that philosophers have hitherto only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. So everybody in the corpus of Marxism is trying to change the world in somehow or the other. So now it's time, I think, to go back to Shoykotda. If you have anything to add on that, I must, confess one thing, that this was a huge topic, and I don't know how much I could, justify the topic. But yes, I tried my level best. Although I apologize for not being able to cover each and everything very, subtly, or maybe as subtly as possible. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Sovan. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
I must also confess that for the last 2 hours and 21 minutes, to be more precise, I was also very glued to what you were speaking. I was astonished and awestruck by the kind of research that you have undertaken to deliver this lecture. I am very honored. In fact, myself and Shreya ma'am feel very happy, and at the same time we feel very honored that you take this platform so seriously, and you do, you put in so much of effort. I hope the participants today, as you had said, have taken the screenshots, because whatever you have spoken, whatever references you have given, if somebody takes Marxism from today and reads your slides and wants to read it completely, including the citations, I'm sure it will take more than a month and a half to read and go through it. That was the kind of effort that has been put, and of course how much of clarification that person gets after reading. So I really congratulate you for putting in so much of research, so much of hard work in preparing this slide. I was completely unaware that you are so techno savvy nowadays, that you can prepare so to the point specific slides. So congratulations to you for that as well, and I'm very proud to share with you that fact as well. The way you have pointed, the way you have dealt with all the concepts right from the inception till the completion. And to add icing to the cake was the 3 texts that you discussed and the applications of the various Marxist theory on the 3 texts that you discussed. Just to let the participants, just to inform the participants, this was Shovan's presentation after we decided certain things to curtail down. He wanted something more, but because of the paucity of time, we had to curtail some things. This is not everything he wanted. He wanted some more things, because he felt, we also felt, that there are some more texts that he wanted to delve. But I must appreciate the way the one-liners, the 3 pointers that you wanted to explain, and you have explained the various texts that you had taken in your part 2 of your presentation. And
Thank you
thank
very
you very
much
much.
for all your praise, and I'm proud too and privileged too, and feel honored too that Shreya ma'am and you have given me a chance to deliberate my views on this platform. Thank you very much.
I would also like to appreciate, I would also like to inform our participants that as days are passing by, I feel personally, because I'm in charge of the Dialectics Telegram group, as well as the various messages that come, you all are a bit more demanding. And please ensure that your demands are rational and reasonable. That is the best sophisticated and educated way I can say. I've been receiving a lot of messages. You are given the right to express. That doesn't mean that your expression crosses the limits. Please keep that in mind. I will not name, or I will not have respect for the kind of dedication a researcher shows on this platform. If you can't, please move ahead. Please leave the platform. We will refund your registration fee. This is not about fee. This is about cerebral feast. If you feel, and you can generally feel, because if you are not an avid reader, this is not the platform to be. So if you feel that you do not belong to this platform, please leave the platform, inform me, and we will refund your registration fee. Thank you so much. Now we come to the questions. We have the first question by Mr. Tariq Ali. And Tariq Ali says that, is the concept of class conflict valid for classical writings where there were absence of capitalist society, such as in Oedipus Rex? I mean, can we criticize such terms in terms of class conflict?
This is a very welcome question. I mean, and a very complicated, sphere as well of research and of thinking. This is basically, I personally have faced this as well, that how can you talk about a text which is not embedded in a particular time? How can you take out the text of that period and then analyze it, applying some concepts which were somehow or the other perceived to be outside of that the historical moment? Fine. So I personally have faced this because I work on folklore, and I have an analysis in a particular paper of some, I think a German folktale or something like that, which was like alien in views of the readers or the reviewers. It was alien. The tools that I employed, they were alien to that historical moment. So their question was the same: how can we employ these tools to the texts which classically do not belong to that period, or generically do not belong to that time? So my answer is that, first of all, we need to understand two things. Whether we are looking at Marxism as a tool to analyze the text. So if it is a tool for analyzing a text, then the text can be reproduced from the contemporary point of view, taking into consideration the socio-historical, materialistic conditions or cultural conditions of the reader. And I think there, from this, the whole analysis or a critical branch of reader's response theory that has emerged. Fine. That it is from the reader's perspective that you are analyzing a text, rather you are negating the fact that a text could only be limited or restricted to a certain period of time. So this is response number one. So whether we are treating Marxism as a tool, for example, class structure and struggle as a tool or not, that is question number one. Second thing, Marxism or class structure is all about dialectics. I started with dialectics. So there can be, I believe, a dialectics or a conversation, a reasoned conversation, a dialogue between that time and now time. So if we understand properly the basic premise of Marxism, we think we should understand very deeply with what dialecticism is. Fine. So there can be a dialogue, I believe, with the bygone time and the now time. And there is the third response will be taken up from I think from Benjamin itself, where he talks about, you know, the time which is like as a constellation. Fine. A time as a constellation. Fine. Like this time is not about this time. Suppose today I am thinking of my childhood and writing about it. Then when I'm writing about my childhood in the literature that I'm producing, that is a reality. And that my childhood days are gone, that is also, you know, a truth. So then time means the time of my childhood is also getting reproduced with my writing about the childhood in a now time. So it is all about an approach, how to look at history, whether we take history as a linear process that, you know, that is I mean, also has also been made a kind of, you know, not working in today's academia or research criticism. I think so, that this is a bygone idea, that, you know, this is a linear, history is a linear thing. Although our basic concept about history is that it is it happens in phased manner, it has a linear progression. So that time means the past is not about the past is also about you know, the present. So the presentness of the past or the pastness of the present, this is how we can look at the issue. And there he says, Benjamin says that, you know, history should be considered as a crystallization of all the, you know, times taken together. Fine, not as a linear structure for that matter. So past, then it's followed by, you know, present, which is followed by present. This linearity is not always true. For example, when you think of a stream of consciousness novel, you simply say that the writer is going forward, is moving forward and going back. This is a linear approach to history, that there is a past which is compartmentalized from the present, which is in its turn compartmentalized from the future. But the time you are reading it from your own position, from your own time, then you can see that past is always you know, hand in hand walking with you. So past is always also about the present. So this presentness of the past or pastness of the present, through these dialectics, we can think about this question. I think this satisfies you.
Thank you,
I have
Dr.
nothing
Sovan.
more to add.
We go to the
Yeah.
next question. The next question is an interesting one. And it would require your observation. This is by Sovan Chakraborty, and she says that since you mentioned Marxist feminism, do you think there is a need to revisit Marx since he lives out the labor employed by women behind the male factory worker, that is food production and fetching fuel, as Adrian Rich contends? If yes, are the women and their labor to be looked as doubly alienated from the market or exchange value?
See, first of all, I'm not an expert in feminism. So I can only answer this question from a more generalized, point of view of theorizing about it. Fine. So I cannot give you specific answer quoting from different feminist texts for that matter. But yes, the generalized answer is that revisiting thing, or the double alienation has been a matter of a theoretical concern and also a theoretical tool for many paradigms of culture for that matter. For example, in the case of colonialism, we say that the black people are doubly colonized. Fine. For that matter, we like Spivak talks about the third world feminism for that matter. As females, we are doubly alienated from the from their white counterparts. So they are at the first instance alienated from the white feminism, and then they are alienated from the Desi feminism or the indigenous feminism as propounded by the local bourgeois or the national bourgeois for that matter. So this is also an instance of double alienation. So double alienation as a tool and reformulation of Marxist system of production that has been responded and criticized and reformulated in various ways in various in cases of various paradigms of post-colonial post-structural studies of which is somehow related to Marxism or not related to Marxism. So I think that will be my response from a very generalized theoretical point of view.
Thank you. The next question is by Madhiya Sahin, and Madhiya says that does power always leads to corruption as it's reflected in George Orwell's Animal Farm?
See, Shoykotda was talking about some features that I wanted to talk about and I could not. So one of these concepts was totalitarianism. Fine. So totalitarianism, as the followers of Engels established in the form of power structures like state, concrete power structures like state, Orwell was basically opposing that. But at the same time, against this totalitarianism that Marx started dwelling upon his thinking on this claim of totalitarianism in philosophy as far as idealism is concerned, that Marx opposed and started his own thesis of materialism for that matter. So the world goes like this. There will be totalitarianism which is related to this animal farm, which is opposed in animal farm, and then there will be an anti-epoch to that totalitarianism, and when it will be progressed further in history and will be negated, by a fuller structure or more complete structure. Fine. At the second level, then there will be this negation of negation. Fine. So this is all about negation of totalitarianism to start with, and then also the negation of the antithesis that came up in response to that. So this is how dialectics goes about. And can you repeat the question? I think I have responded to it. Can you repeat it, Shukoda, for a while?
Power always leads to corruption, as is reflected in George Orwell's Animal Farm.
Yes. So power corrupts when it materializes totalitarianism. That will be my response to it. So if we are studying Marxism, or we are Marxists ourselves, or we think ourselves Marxists or anti-Marxists, whatever, we should abstain from dreaming of a totalitarian society. And this totality and totalitarianism, both in Hegel and Marx, that was revised by many of the cultural theorists who combined Marxism with the post-structuralist stances for that matter, like negative dialectics as propounded by Theodor Adorno. He is basically rejecting the premise of identity principle. And he is telling there cannot be an absolute synthesis at any moment. If at any moment there is the synthesis, which is a totalitarian concept, there will be distress and agony to a Marxist dream. So we should abstain ourselves from making a synthesis. So he is keeping his dialectics always in terms of negation. He is not aiming to reach anywhere. So this will be my response.
Thank you. We take the last question of the day by Partho Das, and Partho asks that what is the role of overproduction on the relation between accumulation and value crisis?
Overdetermination he is talking about. Is he talking about overdetermination?
I repeat the question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the role of overproduction?
Overproduction
On the relation between accumulation and value crisis.
Oh, that is the basic the basis of that makes the basis, or that forms the basis of a post-structuralist thought or a postmodernist thought. For example, Baudrillard is talking about simulacrum. What is simulacrum? Simulacrum is a commodity which is a result of this overproduction. And the commodity is overproduced to such an extent that there are only copies, as I also mentioned in case of Benjamin. There are only copies without original. And it is not about the quantification of the products or commodities. It is also about the relational values, also about our existence as correlated with these products, our ability to form meaning out of it. So overproduction is a process that renders over quantification of commodities, but devaluation to the extent of meaninglessness to the commodity. So what is a simulacrum? Baudrillard says that a simulacrum does not even bother to hide a reality. A simulacrum is itself a truth. What is the truth all about? That there is no reality at all beneath the surface. So this is the result of overproduction. Benjamin is talking about same in in his thesis, in where writer is posed in in the age of mechanical reproduction. He is formulating it in a positive way, we can say. He is formulating the concepts of resistance in form of shock. So in order to resist the aesthetic effect or the cultural effect or the existential effect of this overproduction, we need to continuously be aware to produce these shock effects, like montage he mentioned. So I think this will be my response to this question. And thank you to all who have asked such provocative questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sovan. I truly feel, I'm sure I and Shreya ma'am, along with the team and the participants, feel that this has been a very, very engaging, enriching, and critical session.
Thank you very much.
And
I also would like to add this, I wanted also to discuss overdetermination of Althusser and uneven development, which could have addressed the last question even better. But this is an ocean. Yeah, and this is, I believe, the starting point of all the contemporary critical theories. Fine. So yeah, Shokodda, you were telling something. Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you. May I, before we leave, may I request Shreya ma'am to please convey her vote of thanks.
Well, a very good evening to all of you, and thank you for staying on. It is, I just realized that Dr. Sovan Chakraborty, Sovan that is, has been speaking for 3 hours flat, right? Which shows that how engaging this session has been. So on behalf of Team DAATH Voyage, Shoikat and myself, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this really erudite session. Shobhan, you have, excelled yourself, I think.
I'm more than honored by such a remark.
No, I absolutely mean it, beginning from, Gramsci to, Ranajit Guha in, one segment, looking through each of the important terms connected to Marxism in the other, and finally the analysis of the 3 texts that you have done from Shakespeare to Baudelaire. It was really very well researched and very cogent. But of course, I know that I was the culprit who cut down on many of the things that you wanted to say. But then it is already 3 hours. But I think Shoikat and me, we will request you for another session. And anyway, you will be back to this session again and again, because there are so many things to discuss, to ponder about. But before I conclude, your session today reminded me of something when I was many years back, when I had gone to Durban for a conference. And after I had, spoken for the first time in a conference on Chinua Achebe, on whom I went on to research thereafter, a very well-known poet from South Sudan, Taban Loliong, had complimented me by saying that the fate of the study of African literature in India is in safe hands. Today, I remembered him, I remember him often. During dark days, I remember him, and it keeps me going. Today, when you were talking, it reminded me of him. And I feel compelled to tell you, Shobhan, that with you and with scholars like you, the fate of the study of theories, literary theories in India is in very safe hands.
Such a big compliment. I think it's disproportionate with my knowledge and my skill. Anyways, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, ma'am.
No, this was, I really liked the way you had researched and the way you had presented and the seriousness that you have brought to this platform. So once again, I thank you. I thank my team of volunteers, the behind screen people who have been working. I thank all the participants for joining us today. And we meet again tomorrow at 6 for another session, an engaging session on psychoanalytic criticism. So all of you, please stay safe and take care of yourselves. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you
Good
very
night.
much. Good night. Good night. Bye.